still have. Well, there's your common emotion that also can affect that. You get certain aches and pains. Once you got rid of them, feel it, it's very easy to let it go.
Uh-huh.
So that does happen. But a lot of things, speaking of operations, were you speaking of operation? Okay. What it is that, unfortunately, when they do doctors do tests on you, when they can't figure out what it is, they often figure like operations will help. Now, there's lots quite often it does, but not necessarily. A lady I worked with years ago, she came into my office. She was 26, and she sort of walked very stiff-legged, and I said, "Problem with your knees?" And she was surprised I figured that out. So she said, "Yep." I said, "How long have you had that?" Since she was 10. So she was 26 when she came in, about 16 years. I said, did anybody do anything to help your knees? She said she had 3 operations on each knee. I said, "Did it help?" And she very, very loudly said, "No, not even a little bit." So I said, "Let's check it out in this session." So it turned out, in her mind's eye, she saw herself as a black lady, way overweight, about 400 years ago in Africa. And she was down by the river washing clothes. And because she was overweight, they thought she could sort of like help in the village, so they let her do all of that work. And the girl, in her mind's eye, my client, said, "She's kneeling. It's a rocky shore. Not a mud shore, it was rocky." And she said, "Oh, she's kneeling mostly on her right knee on that rock." And she said, "That's where it hurts most in this leg." Now I said, "How did that woman feel?" And just described similar what you just said. And in this leg, she said, "Yes." And what happened is, when she finished the session, she stood up and she started doing knee bends. And I didn't know she hasn't done this since she was 10. So, when you didn't know, it's harder to be impressed. She went out, and her parents had driven her there because she couldn't drive well with her knee problem. And she showed them, well, you never saw 2 people, their jaws just about hit the floor. They were just amazed. That's all it was. Now, this is one that I did see this lady about 5-6 years later, as I was on tour a lot, and I was in the same area, and she came up to me and said, "Remember me?" And you know how when you've seen thousands of people, you go, eh. She said, "Knees." And I went, "Oh, yeah," because I also knew it was that same area. I said, "How's your knees?" She said, "They've been perfect except for one thing. The scar tissue on her knees for the operation she didn't need bothered her in certain types of weather." That is it.
Wow.
So a lot of people have operations that don't need, but they don't know that.
Oh, I know. That's, yeah. Well, you know what they do, too, when you get out, a lot of people don't realize, right? You go in for a back operation. I had one, when I was young, I had one. The doctor never said, "Hey, about 20 years from now, 15 years from now, you're going to get real bad arthritis. So you're going to have a hard time bending over." They don't tell you that, okay? And sure enough, 10, 15 years after I had my back operation, I had a hard time bending over. My back was stiff and it hurt. I think a lot of times if people, maybe did what you're talking about.
Some don't want to give you the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
Arthritis is actually not a real either. And if you get, the fingers get gnarled from arthritic pain, that's just because it's been there for so long. It's like when people come in and they've got arthritis in their ankles and wrists, and that I always know roughly where it came from, just from doing enough of them. But I still don't say that because if I did, I think I know it's usually wrong. It's generally dungeons. They had the chains on their ankles and wrists. And they didn't take them off for a break. You didn't get a bathroom break either. And you wear these for 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to affect your ankles and wrists.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when then I say to people, move their hands and wrists. And they look, again, their eyes are closed, but they look on their face as they're moving it for the first time. One lady, her hands were still pretty bad. She could not move her fingers well. So I said, go to the past life, and she said that they were told it was arthritis. Some cover the butt. I said, go to the past life, the cause of that. And she saw herself in a dungeon. And what they had done to torture her is they took a hammer and they hammered her fingers.
Oh, ow.
I know. We weren't nice in the old days. And, or sometimes new days. Then, obviously, she couldn't use her hands after that. So then I said to her, one thing too, when I say go to the cause, it always goes to the right one. It's never something like, like you're swinging from a branch and your arms are tired or something. It's always the correct one. It's always that part. If you get shot, I don't say, is it in the shoulder that you're told me your pain is? I'll say, where? Shoulder. I'll say, which one? And they'll say, always, the one that's bothering them. It's always where it came from. I said, move your hands around. Now, eyes are closed. She puts her hands up. She started moving them. And it sounded like a Rice Krispie commercial. Snap, crackle, pop. And she sort of jumped back a bit. She said, never done that. I said, keep going. Within another moment, they stopped. And she said, well, and she started flexing her fingers even better. She said, I've never moved them this good for she couldn't remember when. It's been that long. And it was gone. And it doesn't come back. I don't know why. It doesn't come back. It's not like a temporary thing. Yeah, I work on cause and effect. You take an aspirin for a stress headache. Does that get rid of your stress?
No, it doesn't.
No. It's cause and effect. So when people say face your fears or take this medicine, and then you end up taking more medicine for the side effects of the medicine you're taking to begin with, which you shouldn't have had anyways, it doesn't go. So it doesn't come back. So I got tons of case histories.
Yeah.
You said you had some fears and phobias. What have you got?
This is interesting. I guess all I can say right now. You just have me totally in kind of a maze state.
Okay. Here's a good one. A lot of people have sleeping problems. Do you go to sleep quick or slow, Gary?
Honestly, because I have some health issues myself.
No, dishonestly. Yeah.
Honestly, I get maybe 3 hours sleep a day.
Yeah.
That's it. 3 hours, maybe.
Do you feel that's enough?
Sometimes no. I mean, I've been doing this for like the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's your 10. Okay. What it is that we're physically supposed to get a bit more sleep than that. Part of the problem is sleep, they call it sleep apnea, those type of things. Again, it's past life. When I have a client that doesn't go to sleep well, it's usually not just, if it happens once in a while, fine. I generally go to sleep within minutes. But what it is that, unfortunately, women usually have more of a problem because too much what if.
Uh-huh.
Because, actually I have to back up to explain something. A physical thing, the human brain, not the mind, this is the brain. This husband-wife team of scientists wrote a book. I thought they were British. They found out when I was in Australia, they're Australian. The catchy title is called Men Don't Listen and Women Can't Read Maps. It just runs off your tongue. When I say that, you can see women cringing and stuff. What it is the human brain, the female-male brain, are very different. It's evolution. Men are better at seeing three-dimensional because they would go out to hunt and it's easy to see game and stuff like that. Women are actually better at peripheral vision than men. They can see better from left and right. I just jokingly said it. Obviously, they can see which kid is being killed by which dinosaurs and which one to save, whatever. Also, because of that, women also have more of a problem driving at night than men. It does happen. And speaking of the maps, and I was just talking to a lady yesterday about that, and I said, women always turn the maps around to read it. She started laughing and said, that's no way. Most people, or men, do you turn the map? I never did.
No, I never have.
But no, I don't.
I got lost a lot, too.
Yeah. Generally, some people are better at that direction. But one of the things they did test, and this is going toward that sleeping thing, or found out, is that the female brain can start conversations in 5 different points of the brain. Men have 0 points, so we can only start one conversation. So yes, women can, and have a reason now for doing it, multitask better than men, because they get 5 conversations going with more thinking. But it backfires about going to sleep, so they get 5 times more what if than men do. I mean, when I got to do something tomorrow and I got to go, well, if I go this way, go that way, okay, done. How many different ways can you handle it? And besides, if you get a better night's sleep, you can handle your the stuff the next day. So there's why a lot of people. But on the other hand, some people don't go to sleep well because, sure enough, they've been murdered in their sleep.
Uh-huh.
Or one was a soldier the other day. He was on guard duty, and he fell asleep. This was a couple of years ago, and he got killed, and then they came in and wiped out the rest of his men. There's guilt. There's a guilt thing there. And now, don't go to sleep, you're going to get killed. So a lot of that does happen, too. I've had a few people that woke up at a certain time of the night continually.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Well, one of them was a lady, at 3:05 to 3:10 range, she would wake up every night. And this was on for like 20, 30 years. She couldn't remember when it didn't. And it would take her half an hour to go back to sleep. She found it very annoying. I'd find it annoying. Turned out what it was is that the fourth strongest commonest fear is called claustrophobia.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people were buried alive, not on purpose. Well, somewhere. It's because if you were in a coma, your heart slowed down, you didn't breathe that much. The test to see if you're alive was putting a feather under your nose. Gee, that's a real...
That's not reliable, no.
No. And they'd bury you. And what happened, in fact, grave robbers, there's reports on record that grave robbers often noticed that a lot of the graves they were robbing had scratch marks on the inside. And what happened is that she woke up in the coffin, and of course she died from panicked and suffocated. And I said, let your subconscious tell you what time was it, because your subconscious has every detail, and it knows the answers continually. She said 3:05. There's where it came from. And last I talked to her a few months later, she said, never wakes up anymore.
Oh,
Another
wow.
ironic one is this guy woke up at 5 every morning, and he doesn't like waking up because he worked afternoons. And it turned out he was just a farmer in a different life, and they always got up with the sun, remember, to get the cattle. So that improved for him, too. Expressions came from different things. You ever heard the expression that his face sure rings a bell, or he's a dead ringer for so-and-so?
Oh, yeah.
You ever heard those expressions?
Oh, yeah, quite a bit.
That's because what they did, especially if you were a bit more affluent, when they buried you, they would actually put a string down to a part of your body, up to the ground, to a tube or something, I think, and to a bell. So if you woke up and you started panicking, which that would happen, it would ring the bell and they'd quickly dig you up. Somebody would always know, if you're poor or pauper, nobody would hang around. But then also, I learned more history from doing this. I didn't realize the graveyard shift. I thought that was just somebody working midnights. That was what they called the guy that was sat in the graveyard at night listening for the bell. That was the graveyard shift.
You know, Chris, my grandmother told me that her mother, now she lived up by Langley, up BC or something. Part of my family is from Germany. The other part, my mom was a Canadian and then moved here. Yeah. But my grandmother was telling me that her mother was buried. Now you're talking, she would have been like about 1890s, 1880s, something around there for her. Because when I was a kid, she was telling me that. But for some reason, they decided to have her into a different cemetery. And what the story was that when they moved her, my grandmother said that they wanted to I don't know what they make her look better or whatever. So they opened up the coffin, and she said it was her fingers were like gone. The tips of their fingers were gone, and the top of the coffin was all scored and scratched up.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, that's what happened.
And there was a lot of them. I mean, I just scare me nowadays. If you're gonna in the future, people go in the hospital, and maybe back 20 years ago, because they're getting really sophisticated now. My fear is always been I die, right? They take me to the funeral home, and they embalm me while I'm still alive. And I've had that nightmare so much. Yeah. I don't know what that means, but maybe it's happened to me in the past.
It probably did, Gary.
And maybe that's why I don't sleep at night.
Get cremated. That'll take care of that problem.
Hey, did you hear the news a couple weeks ago? That happened. I guess a employee, whatever, laid down or did something